Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we are looking at Marvel Legends' new version of Apocalypse, which features a lot of old parts and some new ones, and it's a very unique look for Apocalypse. It happens to be one of my favorites. Did they do a good job capturing it and turning it into a plastic person? It's somewhere in the middle. It's not bad, but it definitely could be better. We'll show you some examples of that in just a minute, but first I'll just mention they did do some things really nicely on this guy. A handful of things, in fact, not just a few. Some nice batch of things are very nicely done. There are a couple things, though, that just really grind my gears. We'll talk about all of it. So let's go ahead and get it off the stand and take a closer look. This guy stands just about 20.5 centimeters, closer to 20 centimeters, which makes him pretty close to, let's say, a little over 8 inches. That's good enough. He's a big one. He's a big guy. And it looks pretty good. At first glance, it's very nicely done. Some of the things that are great about it, the paint job right here in his little special place, it is just super duper clean. I thought for sure they were going to mess that up, and I'm going to say maybe it couldn't be better if it wasn't for a little bit of red that got on the hip there. That is just as clean as it gets. Same thing with his boob paint. His tatties have a darker blue on them than the rest of his body. It's kind of hard to see on camera because of the way the metallic paint reflects and plastic reflects the light, but these are darker blue than the rest, and they did a really good job with that. That's all very nicely done. The face is painted very clean as well. So as far as I can tell, the paints are the best part about this figure. Very, very nicely done. I like it a bunch. That's awesome. The plastics are all uniform as well. We don't have anywhere near as much of that marbly look that we normally get with this type of plastic. I don't see any swirls. I see some swirls up here. I take it back. The shoulder pads have some swirls. This part seems to be better though. And you can kind of tell it's less transparent. Usually they're translucent. It's a lot more opaque than normal, and it gives a really nice effect. I like that a whole bunch. We're going to set this aside because it keeps falling off. Okay, so that's the main look of the figure right there. The thing that bugs me the most about this guy is that he could have looked so much cooler if they didn't use this body. And I'll post 2 reference images of 2 different stylings of this particular style of him that look great. And definitely don't do this one though, because that one's terrible. But it's still fine. Like, I mean, maybe they could have used like a Hulk body. That would have been weird with new legs. That might have worked. There are things they could have done, but this is still probably going to be okay for most people. The only big issue I have for this mold in particular, other than this piece keeps coming off and getting weird, is that piece is very big, and it just makes his whole upper body look weird. It looks very uncomfortable for him. There's no good way to really pose him in a practical way. Yeah, you'll be able to get a shot or something, but I don't know. It's just a little weird, cluttered up here. I've heard a lot of people say they don't care. I've heard a lot of people say they don't like it. It could go either way. It's going to come down to your preferences, but it's an all in all decent build still. I guess the other thing that stands out is how fat his ankles are, and then his feet. It's a very stumpy look for his lower legs, and generally speaking, his boots are more like Zelda boots, where they have like a big cuff with a metal thing, and then normal sized ankles and feet, and he's just got really big fat feet, so that does throw him off a little bit too. But it's still a really aesthetically pleasing figure, and they did a good job for the most part on the aesthetic. The cape is just a big chunk of black plastic, but the way it fits on is pretty good. I wouldn't have minded a little bit of a snap for it to hold in, because it likes to pop off as you're handling the figure. But it does fit nicely and it looks good, and overall I like it. Like I said, this is one of my favorite looks for him, so I of course would like it to look even more like my particular version, but I think normal people who don't have a particular fondness for this look are going to be perfectly happy with it. It did a really good job with the sculpt on the cape. It looks good, so I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 for the aesthetic. And for the accessories, we have one interchangeable hand. I actually had the open hand on him already, but he has a fist hand for either side and then an open hand for the left side, and that's okay. We do have an alternate head. Let's go ahead and just talk about the alternate head on camera rather than in the photo. So that's the neutral head. Obviously, you already saw that on him. We'll pop that off, and then I'll show you how this head functions, because this is the open laughing head. It's not bad, but to me it looks like he has to be leaning back for that sculpt, and then it's fine. But if you have him looking forward, I don't know, I guess it's not as bad. So the thing about this head that really bugs me, this bottom row of teeth are perfectly parallel, if not tilted up in the front with the top teeth. And I get that he's Apocalypse and he doesn't have to follow normal physics of human jaws, but there should be a different shape of that jaw there. It looks weird. Most people won't notice that. If you know about anatomy and stuff like that, it will probably drive you nuts. It looks like his jaw is opening like this rather than like a jaw. That was very close. That's a very good recreation of a jaw with my thumb. Anyway, the head's there, and then we do get a skull for the other accessory, which is actually a nice little skull. 5 out of 10 for the accessories. That's not... Oh, 7? 7 out of 10 for the accessories. An alternate head is fine. One hand is okay and the skull is okay. It's good for one particular pose. I suppose that's alright. Okay, as far as the articulation goes, I'm just going to leave the cape off. It just falls off way too much because these shoulder pads are just dangly. They don't do anything, which is fine for shoulder pads, but as far as the cape being connected to them, it's not really conducive. These are very dangly. They're just connected up here and they're very floppy. Okay, now as far as the head goes, with this thing on, you can't really do much with it, as I already mentioned. There's not a great way around that other than to rebuild it properly rather than just sticking something on top there, so it's pretty limiting what you can do with the head. For the shoulders, since these guys are just floaty things, you can see they just kind of tab in right there. Shoulders work that well without the shoulder pads. You can force it, get a little bit better right there, so that's good, that's fine. You do have your full rotation, that's fine. What do you get when the shoulder pads are connected? Well, they can go up, so it's not going to really impede it. When you go around this way, it'll work. It's not bad, actually. We've seen much uglier, so that's okay. And then going back, yeah, it's not the worst we've ever seen. That's all right with me. You do get your bicep swivel right there. Very limited range there. And you're going to get very limited range here because of the wrist being so far in there. And then this part does not rotate, by the way. If it does, mine's stuck. I don't believe it does it. Yeah, it's keyed. Okay, now we have a diaphragm or a butterfly joint, which on mine is completely flaccid. Does anybody have a better situation on theirs? Because if that's the case, I need to order a different one because I don't want a flaccid Apocalypse. That would not be good. So it is very loose. You can feel some ratcheting in there, and it actually functions well, but mine is just super floppy. So let me know if you guys have that issue with yours or not. You do get a waist twist. Hips go out to the side very nicely. No issue there. Going forward, no problem. Not really any back range. Swivel is fine. Double jointed knee works really well. Do we get a boot swivel? We do, which is good. Ankles go back really far. They go forward, not very far at all. Like, they could totally go farther forward, but they don't. So that really sucks. And then you get an ankle rocker, which is fine. Yeah, definitely not the best in the world, but it's going to be good enough for Apocalypse. So articulation-wise, I'll give it a 7. Yeah, it's pretty limited for the neck, for the elbows, for the ankles. It's fairly well limited. Luckily, you're probably just going to have him standing there looking like a badass because it's Apocalypse, and he doesn't run around that much, at least in this form, as far as I can remember. Most of his stuff is fairly static. That's okay. I think it'll be fine. It's going to look cool on a shelf. If you really wanted to, you could just pose him holding the skull like they intended, and then you'd be done. So it looks good. I like it. It poses well enough for what it's supposed to do, and it has some accessories. So final verdict on this guy, while it maybe isn't what I was hoping it would be, it's still pretty darn good. I'll give it, assuming they're not all floppy, I'll go ahead and give it an 8. I think it's a very strong release, and a lot of people are going to enjoy having this in their collection. But it definitely has its fair share of flaws. Oh, now I can see a little bit of swirling in there. So there is still some swirling in the plastic, but it definitely looks better. So yeah, it's a fine release. It's not as impressive as I had hoped it would be, but it's definitely a good one. So there you go, guys. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. And if you haven't subscribed, you probably should, because I have new videos coming out just about every single day and thousands already on the channel. So make sure you come back for all of that. And in the meantime, keep collecting.